had one of the worst Father's Day ever.
No.
This past Father's Day.
No, Brad. No.
And what makes it even worse, I got nobody to blame but myself. Let me tell you what happened.
I thought you were going to be like your children all threw apple pies at you. I don't know. I didn't know what you were going to say.
No, this was all my fault, and I'm not. This is half of the story. I'm not going to get into the weeds and tell you the other half, but this was the first half of the worst Father's Day ever.
Oh no.
In our bedroom, we've got.
Oh no! It's already starting terrible. Oh no! I'd like to back out of the story, please.
No, we've got a burnt out light bulb in our ceiling fixture.
Oh, is that a metaphor, Brad? That you have a burnt out light bulb in your bedroom?
It's an actual burnt out light bulb.
Okay.
And our ceiling fixture has like a glass around it, like a lot of these do, and it's like an upside down bowl.
I know what you mean.
If you can imagine that.
Sure.
And it takes a special kind of globe light bulb. So I'm like, you know what? I'm in the fatherly kind of dad kind of doing things mood. I'm gonna go up to the hardware store. I'm gonna get a new light bulb. I'm gonna come back, fix that light up. Boy, oh boy, will it ever be great.
Can I ask you a quick question, not to intercede on your story? Did you wear your special T-shirt that gets you 10% off light bulbs at the hardware store?
Ace Hardware hasn't come out with that yet, but if they do, you better believe I'll be wearing it.
I think about this all the time, that you have a special shirt that gets you 10% off meat products. I think that's so GD funny. Anyway, keep going.
So I went and I took the picture of the light bulb, so I got the right one.
Sure.
I made sure I got the wattage all lined up, all of that crap. And as I'm going up there, I realize this glass bowl that's around the ceiling fixture, it's all dirty and dusty and grimy. And I'm like, you know what? My wife would really appreciate, since I'm up here anyway, if I were to clean that nice
Wouldn't
glass.
That be nice? A nice clean glass.
Oh my goodness. How wonderful that would be.
What a good husband. Sure.
And so it's got these 3 little clips that hold it in place with these 3 screws that are about the size of a thumbtack. You know those kind, very common in ceiling fixtures, right? So a screw puts a clamp in and the clamp holds it in place. I take the screws out, I take this bowl down, I wash it up, I get it to go back up, and I screw 2 of the screws in, and I cannot get that 3rd hole to line up for the life of me. So I try it again. I loosen up the 2 screws to give me some wiggle room. Can't get it to light up. Maybe I'm starting with the wrong screw. So I take all the screws out and I start with the other screw, right? The one that I couldn't get in. I do that one first and I work my way around. Can't get the 3rd one to line up so I can put the screw in. I'm sitting there and now even I've got the air conditioner going, sweat pouring down my face. I'm like, son of a gun. So I call my younger son, Max, in, and I say, Max, I need just I know what's wrong here. I just need an extra set of hands. That's all. Just need an extra set of hands. He says, no problem. And he holds it in place, and I go with the screws, and I can't get this thing to line up. I can't get the 3rd screw in. I drop the screw. And we got to come back down and look all over the bedroom to see where it is. Now we're back up when we're trying it again. Can't get it to line up. All of a sudden, there's a voice in the door. It's my older son, Alex. He says, what are you 2 doing? I said, get up here. We need all the help we can get. Now there's 3 of us. And we're all, chirping.
How many Geigers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Literally.
Quite literally, Brad.
Put it a little bit this way, put it a little bit that way. Finally, I don't know what happened, but I got that one just to grab, and I cranked it, and I got those all real tight, and I said, this is all your mother's fault. She's the one that picked out this light fixture. We're never taking it down again. And I said, before we do anything, flip that light on to make sure that the light's working.
Oh, God, I didn't even see this coming. Oh, God.
They turn the light on, and Dave, that fucking glass bowl was 10 times dirtier than it was when I first tried to clean it because it's had the fingerprints and smudges of 3 Geigers all up there trying to get this glass bowl.
Oh, God.
You couldn't even see the light coming out. There was so much smudges. So then I'm like, we're not taking it down. I took the glass cleaner and I cleaned it while it was up there.
Sure.
What I should have done in the first place. Got it all nice and clean. It looks gorgeous now. But I'm telling you, it took me an hour and a half to change that light bulb and clean the light fixture, and it's never getting cleaned again. It might as well turn into stained glass up there. It's never getting touched again.
Well, let me just say, ladies, he is off the market. You've never seen one compact, capable man more than Brad Geiger.
God. And on Father's Day, I mean, the one time that you'd think that a guy could be helpful around the house, do a little daddish kind of, it wasn't even, it was literally screwing in a light bulb and maybe doing a little polish up there on the fixture.
Oh my God.
It turned into an ordeal.
It's not like anyone asked you to build a back deck.
No.
Or rehang a door frame or, oh my God, you had to take down a light or change a light bulb, put the light back up.
Imagine what would have happened if they would have told me to change the oil in the car.
Oh, God. I mean, have you ever seen a major industrial fire, Brad? That's the end result. That's the end result. And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about changing light bulbs and making comics.
And falling on your face and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal, Dave Kellett, capable light bulb changer and cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Strip.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We've got a lot going on. By the time this show airs, Bradley J.,
yes,
I think we will be well into July, and Comic-Con should be on my heart. So I will just remind everybody that if you would like a free Comic Lab pin, don't forget to come up to booth 1228 at San Diego Comic-Con and get a free Let's Talk Comics pin, courtesy of Brad Geiger and myself over at booth 1228, Bradley J.
Ooh, 1228. And that's your usual spot. If somebody's ever gone to see you in San Diego before, you've got the deed to that particular section of real estate.
I am like
move.
the belle at the ball at Comic-Con. I've had that same spot now for I think over 10 years, and it's a lovely spot. I really enjoy it.
What's the number again?
That number again, Bradley, is 1228. The 1200 row. It's a corner booth. You just look for a big smiling Dave Kellett standing in front of Sheldon and Drive, and you can get a free Comic Lab Let's Talk Comics pin, courtesy of Brad Geiger and myself. Just come up to the booth and come say hi and talk about the show. But Bradley, I've got a question for you that's come in over from patreon.com/comiclab, and this comes in from George McKay for Brad Geiger and said, Brad, how do you beat perfectionism? Well, I'll tell you, based on Brad with light bulbs, I'll tell you how you beat perfectionism.
I'd like to get close to perfectionism one of these days. Holy moly.
Oh, God, just give Brad anything that Edison ever created, and he'll show you how to defeat perfectionism. Anyway.
Wrestle that sentence to the ground.
I just wrestled it to the ground. All right. Let's try this again, Brad. How do you beat perfectionism? The adage that done is better than perfect is bandied about a lot, but I can't seem to get to the point of continually tweaking things in my final design. Is it because when working digitally, we can continually fiddle with things indefinitely? Brad, how do you, who I know has an eye for getting things right. Let's take this on a serious tangent. You take pride in your work. You want it to be the best looking thing you can be. I know you have a desire to produce your best possible work. Perfection, if I could say it that way. Yeah. How do you personally battle perfection? How do you keep yourself from going back in and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know what the answer is. But I've got to be really, really careful about how I say this because there's two things going on at the same time.
Okay.
Because especially lately on the show, I've been really passionate about telling people you don't need to post every day. You know, you don't need to. I'd rather you give your audience steaks 3 times a week instead of hamburgers every day. Right. And I think there's a lot of detriment to people who aren't taking the time to let time be their editor when they're working, especially in humor, where they're writing something and they don't bother to let a few days, even a week go by before they look back at it and see the flaws that they can fix. They're just running and gunning and they're hurting themselves because eventually I know this just from experience. I see them. I recognize their art style. They come across my feed and I'm like, you've never made me laugh once. And I keep scrolling. Pretty soon you get a reputation for the wrong reasons. And all of that stuff is true. However, I'll tell you the only way, in my opinion, unless you got something that's going to surprise me, the only way to defeat perfectionism is a deadline. And that means you need to set a deadline. This thing needs to be done by the deadline. You need to push the button on the deadline, and you need to start working on the next deadline. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean that the deadline needs to be every day. You still have to go into FCS, frequent, consistent, and significant, and decide what your deadline should be. Mm-hmm. But a deadline, in my opinion, and again, unless you're going to surprise me, is the only thing that I can think of that can beat perfectionism, because at some point you've got to say this is done because the deadline is now, and I got to get working on the next thing. I got a whole archive to build for my future fans, right? I've got a certain amount of comics I want to get done this year. I've got a book I'd like to do at some point. Well, you don't do that by screwing around. Well, maybe his mustache should be to the left. Maybe it should be to the right. At some point, it's done. And you got to go to the next thing. So my answer is you've got to have a deadline, but it's got to be a part of that bigger conversation that we've been having on the show. Now, are you going to surprise me? Do you have a different way to come at this that I'm not thinking about?
Yes. So I have a good cop, bad cop answer to this question. My good cop answer is actually remarkably identical to Brad's, which is that the only way you beat perfectionism is to go on to the next comic. And that's a version of what Brad said with deadlines, is that I could, Brad could, you could, any of us could endlessly tweak an existing comic. You could pick any comic out of my archive, and I could tell you 15 fixes that I could do that I only see now that it's finished. I could be like, I need to move that tree to the left.
Oh my God.
Oh, this punchline can be reduced by 30 words. This character's facial expression, if I tweak the face a little bit more, it'll be that much funnier. And Brad, I'm sure, has the same thing with Evil Ink.
I do the exact same thing. I go through your archive and I say,
Oh, God, I love it when you take a shot like that. I didn't see it coming. God damn it, that was funny. Oh, I do the same thing. I go through Sheldon, I could fix this, I could fix this.
Move that duck to the left, gosh darn it. No, in all seriousness, I do the same thing. Yeah. And it's like, and honestly, I could see myself going back into that stuff, but I got shit to do. And so I don't. Yeah. And it's like, like, especially like on a drawing, particularly, I tend to get into the weeds a little bit, or writing. And I'm like, okay, just keep it in note.
Right.
Next time you come across that situation and you're drawing this certain thing, just remember, that you made this mistake before and look for it. But yeah, I'm with you. I could do the same thing ad nauseum looking at my old work.
Yeah, it's and that is the key to not getting stuck on endless tweaking, is knowing that there is the next thing. And in comics, there is always the next thing. We often say you're only as good as the last thing you produced. Well, the flip side is also true. You are only a cartoonist in as much as you're working on the next thing that you're producing. When you stop producing, you were a cartoonist, right? And so you've got to keep moving on a fixed schedule that you have set and that your audience has sort of tacitly agreed to because you've made it public in some way, shape, or form. And it keeps you honest. It keeps you moving on that treadmill to creating the next thing. Because the way you fix a comic 100 comics from now is to do the next 100 comics.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So all the tweaking that you could do on yesterday's is made perfected by the next 100 comics that you do. That's how you get better, not by endlessly tweaking the other thing. Okay, so that's my good cop answer. Now we're going to switch to my bad cop answer, which is me putting on my Brad Geiger hat, which is, as I have gotten older, the more I realize that I ain't so pretty. And here's what I mean by that, okay? Whenever I'm about to do public speaking, Brad, I always find a nearby reflective surface and I check my hair, right? I gotta fix the part in my hair. Here's the thing, no one gives a shit, and it doesn't impact the speech that I'm about to give anyway.
Nope.
But something about my ego thinks that I can make things better by tweaking the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yes.
If I just straighten my hair, this public talk that I'm about to give is gonna be a little bit better. I ain't that pretty and no one cares, right? A version of that is also true with our comics. Like the tweaks that you want to make are probably going to make a 1% difference. So stop tweaking it, right? Yeah. Your comics ain't that pretty in the sense that like 100 comics from now, they will be much prettier. This one, you can only do so much. In the same way that I can only do so much with my looks when I'm giving public speeches. You know what I mean? Yes. Like I am what I am, and that's what the world gets. And so like me tweaking my hairline ain't going to do much to the public speech that I'm about to give, even though my ego wants to make it feel like it's going to have an impact. And a version of that, if you can extend it artistically to what we're creating, is yes, of course, do your best. Yes, of course, plan out the comic the best you can. Yes, of course, execute it the best you can. When it is done, though, you have to say, this was my best effort that I could do in this moment. I am moving on to the next comic. I ain't that pretty. I can only do so much. I'm never going to draw like Mobius. I'm never going to write like Schultz. I've got to move on to the next comic. I mean, is that too harsh, Brad?
No, that's 100% true. That's 100% true. And it gets to a point, if you've been doing that for as long as Dave and I have been doing it, it's so ingrained into your DNA that asking me, like every now and again, somebody will ask me to take an old commission that I did, for example, and redraw it in a certain way, right? Yeah. I'd love to see this, but with a different background. Or I'd love to see this, but with a different this or a different that. And it's like fingernails on a chalkboard making me go into an old piece that I've already done. That's done. Like after doing it, after having this mindset for well over, and my comics career is 25 years, but as a newspaper illustrator, it goes back another 5 or so beyond that, right? And that was a daily deadline. I mean, that'll really put a number on you in between the ears. Asking me to go into something that I've already finished is death to me.
Yes.
I cannot do
because you also know you're robbing from present Brad and future Brad when you work on past Brad. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I've got stuff to do. I've got a new thing to do.
You got a full list of stuff to do that's marching you into the future. Yeah.
That image is what that image is, warts and all. I'm off to the next thing. You stay with that old thing if you want. I'm off to the next thing.
Yeah, but here is what Brad and I do, and I'll tell you why, because it happened to me yesterday. Someone bought an original Sheldon piece from 2005. So that's 20-year-old Sheldon piece, right? Which means I had to go into my fireproof archives and pull it out, and it's way at the bottom.
Of course.
And is wrapped in plastic, ready to go, mailing it off. But before I mailed it off, Brad, I looked it over and reread it. And talk about fresh eyes. Yeah. When a comic is something you created 20 years ago, you read it with fresh eyes. And I said to myself, oh, look at this. 20-year-old Dave, 20-year younger Dave, you really nailed this, and this part about the comic. But you know what? I would have tightened up panel 2. Here's how I would have rewritten that. Oh, you know what? The composition on panel 3. No, I see what I did wrong there, but I also see why younger me did it this way. I remember why I did it that way. Oh, you know what? I couldn't really execute on the way I drew panel 4, but now I would draw it this way. So what Brad and I do allow ourselves now to do is, in a moment of reflection, and it only takes a moment, you mentally say to yourself, how would I change this? How would I make it better? And sure, Brad reads his archives and goes, oh, I see younger Brad's attempt, but here's what I would do to fix it. Dave absolutely goes, oh, I see younger Dave's attempt, but here's what I would do to fix it. But you damn well better not reopen that file and fix it, because that's a waste of time. That is a waste of time.
Yeah. And I see this all the time because I've been doing this date in Evil Ink history on my Blue Sky. So I'll go up and I'll just go through my entire archive and put the date in without the year, June 22nd, and all of the different things that were posted on June 22nd, going all the way back to 2000, pops up, right? And so I'll be able to pull something from here, pull something from there. It's just a fun thing to do on social media, get a little engagement. And you see things all the time that you want to change, you know?
All the time.
this is what it was. This is what it was. Yeah. And also, you've got to be nicer to that younger version of yourself.
Yes.
And not say, go to that person.
And respectful of your younger self, you know?
Yeah. And say, hey, that's what it was. And you needed that to get to here. And by the way, the you that is right now is going to be somebody that 20 years from now, goodness, if all things go well, 20 years from now, you look back older and wiser and say, yeah, he upped his game, but he still had a ways to go. I would have changed this and this and this. There's always something as you keep learning. It's got to be. If you can't do that, on the other hand, if you can't look at your old work and say, oh, yeah, I'd like to change this, this, and this, then you haven't been learning. And that's a problem. That's a problem. If you look back and you're just totally satisfied, you're dopey sitting there going, yeah, looks good to me. I think there might be some learning issues there because you've got to be improving all the way through. Nobody looks back at their old work and is completely satisfied.
And honestly, perfectionism at a certain level is ego triumphing over progress. And here's what I mean by that. So there's a famous photo that Stalin took, Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union.
As opposed to Bernie Stalin over in in South Philly.
I didn't realize how dumb that sounded. All the other Stalins, right? So there's a famous photo. There's actually a few of them.
That. Joseph Stalin.
Joseph Stalin. Yeah, exactly. Not Leonard Stalin, the famous hot dog vendor that we all know. No, there's a famous photo of Joseph Stalin that he took along the Volga River, right? And it's him and I think 3 or 4 other leaders of both the Politburo and like other members, high-ranking members of the Communist Party, right? Mm-hmm. But here's what happened. After Stalin would purge this or that member, he would have people go back in, photo specialists go back in and physically wipe them off of the negative and then reprint the photo, and then that would go out in textbooks. Mm-hmm. So this famous photo of Stalin that first had 5 people in it, then eventually had 4 people in it, and then it got reprinted with 3 people, and then I think eventually the last version, it was literally just 2 people standing in the photo along the Volga River, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of versions of this in totalitarian states, but Joseph Stalin was the worst. But here's the thing is, that's Stalin's ego and willingness to rewrite history winning over any sort of progress. Like, there's better shit the Soviets could have been doing than rewriting photos of history, right? And there's better shit that you can be doing as a cartoonist going forward than trying to rewrite your history. It's not worth it. That's your ego winning over making progress on new stuff. Yeah. And so as you realize that, boy, what a convoluted way to roll in Joseph Stalin. To me, it felt like it was an important parallel, and maybe it is, but I don't know. The more
I enjoyed it. I thought it was perfect. Like, don't double guess yourself already.
I know. Listen to me. I want to go back and re-edit this, Brad. We're going to make perfectionism of this comic lab. Because what I'm trying to say is you can't let your ego, you have to, and this is why I said be respectful of your younger self, be respectful of your past self, because your ego is trying to rewrite that your younger self was better. It's okay that your younger self was not better. They were learning. Be respectful of that. Honor what they did and honor them, especially by making tomorrow's better.
Yes. That's the best honor you can do, is to just say, I'm going to carry this forward and do tomorrow's better. There's no better way to look at it. And also, by the way, the other part of that is if you allow yourself to get mired down, if you allow yourself to keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking, and if you don't set a deadline and say, okay, now I'm on to the next, you're never actually, like Dave said, you're never actually going to be a cartoonist. You're going to be somebody who did one really, really polished comic strip or comic panel or comic page. You're going to be somebody who did one really, really polished thing, but that's not necessarily a cartoonist. A cartoonist is somebody who's got a body of work, not just one very, very polished strip. Right? So you're wasting time. At some point, you got to go on to the next thing. And give yourself the permission to go.
Exactly. It's also a form of self-control. It's mental self-control that the better thing to do in any given situation is to move forward rather than to keep iterating on the past. Because honestly, it a little bit becomes a mental tick if you don't stop. You eventually become George Lucas endlessly tinkering with Star Wars. Star Wars was fine. You know what I mean? Sure, there's some changes that were lovely to make and technical things that he couldn't achieve in 77 that he can do now.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to ask yourself, you're just rearranging deck chairs. You're not necessarily changing Star Wars. You're just changing things around the fridges. Stop spending money, George. Go build your museum. That kind of thing.
Do the thing.
Do the thing. So, Brad, let me jump us into our second question this week over at patreon.com/comiclab. This is about fonts, Brad, and it comes in and says, Brad, how do you go about changing your main font for your comic? I'm using one that that doesn't have a non-serif I. And a serif I is got the header and the base of the I, the two horizontal cross lines. And so I'm using one that doesn't have a non-serif I, and it's time to make Brad Geiger happy and finally tackle this problem. So, Brad, real quick, let's give them an answer on how to go about looking for and then eventually implementing a change of fonts in an ongoing comic.
Fantastic. The first thing you got to do is look for a good comic dialogue font. And that's a specific thing. That's a very specific thing. You're probably not going to find a whole lot of very good instances of this just looking anywhere out there for fonts. You're going to want to go basically to two places, either comicbookfonts.com or blambot.com. So, and then specifically look at where they have dialogue fonts or word balloon fonts listed. Right. And a lot of the ones that you're going to get now are going to have that crossbar I along with the non-crossbar I, both versions. The thing that I want to tell you real quick, and I think I got in touch with this person when they sent their question in, but just for the listener at home, you might think, oh, I don't have a crossbar I, or I've got one, but I don't have the other. And sometimes they hide them. All right. So the way you find out.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There's a special keystroke. I forgot about this. Yeah.
There is a key on a Mac. It's right above your return key. And it's got an up and down line and a backslash as opposed to a forward slash. Okay. It's somewhere nearby in a PC. And by the way, if you look in the Comic Lab Discord server and do a search for this, because I've talked about it a couple times, I've got a couple screen grabs that'll show you exactly where it is, but go shift backslash, and that'll show you in many cases where they're hiding that other version of the capital I, either a crossbar I or a sans serif I. So before you make any changes, look there first. They hide them there. That's the place that they usually hide them. But if that's not the case, go to one of those two places and read over their terms and conditions, right? For comic book fonts, there's usually a fee you've got to pay. There's an awful lot at blambot.com that you don't have to pay if you're using it in certain instances. And again, look over the licensing information that they put there and see how it applies to you. But go through and find some of these fonts that you think would pair well with your art. All right. And you might have to buy a couple and experiment with them a little bit. Right. But that's the first step. Is one of those two websites is kind of the go-to. I'm not aware of any others that you can routinely get good examples of comic book dialogue fonts. And read through the licensing on that, because it might not cost as much as you think. And of course, we always remind people around January 1st that Comic Craft has a big sale that you can get all their very expensive fonts for a much lower price. But that's the first step in searching and finding a few that you think would be a good pairing for your art.
Yeah. Brad and I can't emphasize enough that New Year's Day sale where everything basically becomes $20.25, $20.26, depending on the year. That is a great time to be loading up on fonts. But again, comicbookfont.com or blambot.com. I'll also throw in This is not so helpful for word balloon fonts, but for special effects fonts that are very specific. Yeah. Like, I need a robotic-looking font, but robotic from pre-war 1940s. What would that look like? Yeah. I sometimes have used dafont.com, DAFONT.com. They have some weird and unique creator-made fonts that you can buy. But when you're choosing a font, you'll want to, for the benefit of your own readership, find a font that somewhat feels like it's in the family of your previous font. Because honestly, I think Scott Kurtz said this in the past, that your font is like a fifth character, or your dialogue is a fifth character. Yeah. And I think it's true. So if you introduce a sudden change, it's like changing the look of one of your characters, right? Like, they'll get used to it. They'll adapt. People always do. But it's like when, Brad, remember when you were growing up and Marvel or DC would suddenly change artists and you're like, this is not the Fantastic Four I know, or this is not the X-Men I know, They'll have a moment like that when you change font. So let's transition, Brad, to talk about how do you go about changing the font in an already ongoing comic, already existing comic. Yeah. I would recommend that you talk about it with your readership. You on social media and or your blog and or your Substack, wherever you're publishing, let them know why you're making the change and say, listen, this is the reason. And I would do it a week or so ahead of time. And then again, the day you're changing it, and say, I understand this is going to be a bit of a change, but give your eyes at least 3 or 4 weeks before you complain. I think you'll find that you'll get used to it. And honestly, I think that's the only way to do it. The question I would have to you, Brad, is would you then go back and change all your archives? And how many would you have in the archive before you said, no, I'm not going back and changing my archives?
The number does not matter. I would, again, for the reason of the conversation that we just got done having, I would not go back and change anything from the archives. It would be just like, okay, starting on this comic going forward, this is the font I'm going to use. And that's it. That's it. Well,
let me ask you this, Brad. Yeah. In anticipation of eventual publishing, would you make the font change at an act break or a chapter break where all of book 4 would have the same font, but then book 5 would have a different font?
I'd have to be very tempted by that. Yeah. I would be very tempted to make that in a logical breaking point. If I was putting a book together and it wasn't a whole huge amount of changes, like if it just meant changing a few pages of dialogue font to make the book cohesive, I would do that. But there's a cutoff point where it's just not worth it anymore. And that's a judgment call that I think anybody would have to make on their own. We can't give them a mathematical formula for that. But yeah, I would definitely be inclined to make that change at a clean break somewhere in that storyline or in the ongoing narrative. Yeah.
And as assurance to you, question asker, you would not be the first cartoonist to change their font. I can think of 3 or 4 directly offhand that have changed their font.
Oh, sure.
And again, it in the long term, it makes no difference. For about 3 to 4 weeks, you'll have grumblings from readers. That's fine. It's just like when Brad went to color or when I changed this or that about my comic. You get grumbles no matter what you do. Yep. If it's for the best thing for the comic going forward and future creation of the comic, then I would commit to it and do it. But good luck with it. I think it's a smart move to get rid of the non-crossbar I rule font for the long-term health of your comic. I think and you're making Brad Geiger happy, which is the most important thing that any of us can do.
I love to see good typography. I love to see good typography. They won't read your comic if you can't read your comic.
Hey, gang, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we'll tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Yeah, because when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And you'll get access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And ho Nelly, if you want even more comics goodness in your life, check out the new drawing show that we're doing with our pal Kevin McShane over at wrongwayshow.com. That's wrongwayshow.com.
In each episode, we'll show you how to draw your favorite cartoon characters the wrong way.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics. Well, Bradley, a quick update for this week. This is on tariffs and on import taxes. I just wanted to update my fellow cartoonists that my Anatomy of Dog books just hit the Long Beach port coming in from overseas. And it looks like Dingus's tariffs did not hit it. And this was as I hoped and as I expected, but I'll be honest, I was not 100% sure, which is why I wanted to do this update, because books fall under HS code 4901.99.00, and that code is supposed to be exempt from additional tariffs, right?
Right.
But we all know what supposing is doing to everyone in this day and age.
Yeah.
You gotta confirm. So I just wanted to let everybody know that my books hit port, and I was charged with the normal import tax of 7.5%, which is doable. It's totally manageable. It's what I've had in the past.
You built that into your Kickstarter.
For now, as far as I can confirm, and as far as I'm getting from other third parties, both publishers and independent cartoonists, the tariffs are not currently hitting books being produced overseas. Yeah. So I take this as really good news for my next 4 years of cartooning.
Hey, fingers crossed, your lips to God's ears. That's exactly the update that I wanted to hear.
Yeah, I mean, at least on this one, Brad, we can be assured that my book did not get taxed. So that's great.
Oh, listen to that. That can only mean one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare your chakras and center your vibes, because entering the Comic Lab studio on a radiant beam of self-belief and highly flammable essential oils, it's the one, the only, Susan MacTaggart.
Bradley John, so lovely to see you. Look at you, handsome little duck, making the lady ducks cluck. I gotta say, Bradley John, the goatee is looking particularly good today, Bradley. Particularly
Thank
good,
you.
the goatee. I have to say, Bradley John, the last time I saw a goatee like that, it was chewing grass, Bradley. It was chewing grass. Bradley, so handsome, such a handsome little duck on you. Oh my goodness. So, Bradley, who do we have a personal affirmation for this week?
You'll be so excited. It's our affirmation for Dave Catcherside.
David Catcherside. What a name. Oh, I'll catch your side, David Catcherside. Oh my goodness. So, David, can I call you David? What a lovely name, David. So strong, so tall, so handsome. David, here is your personal affirmation for this week for you. David, you are bursting with potential, which is why you've spent the last hour rearranging your desk instead of starting. David, you're bursting with potential. Get out there, my young man. Get out there and do.
Nothing but potential for David Catcherside. That's fantastic. And while you're here, Susan, I hear you've got a new book out in the bookshelves today.
Oh, Bradley John, you are so kind to refer to my new book, of course, dropping next week from Penguin Random House, Bradley John. It's my new book, and the title is Control Z Your Negativity and Control V Your Love. The new book from Susan MacTaggart, coming out next week from Penguin Random House Publishing.
And there she goes, vanishing on a cloud of sandalwood and raw ambition. It's Susan MacTaggart. We thank her for another soul-fortifying affirmation and for reminding us all that success is just a vision board away, assuming you don't get bored with your vision. And Dave, you missed her again. I cannot believe that every time you take a bathroom break or go out to answer the door, in she sweeps.
I tell you what, it is almost ironic that literally any time I step out of the studio, that's when she shows up. It's beyond my expectations. But Bradley, I should mention that might be the last visit we get from Susan MacTaggart for a while.
Yeah.
So we should caveat this for everybody. So the Susan MacTaggart personal affirmations, we thought would be a lovely idea to invite Susan in.
Yeah.
First of all, because she's contractually obligated, but second of all, because she gives such lovely affirmations to our $10 Patreon backers. But something funny happened, Brad, and this is worth talking about on a show about making comics and making a living from comics, about what happens in terms of Patreon and distributed fundraising when you remind people that they are backing at a certain level.
Well, just to go all the way back, we had this, we heard another podcast do something similar to this. And what happened, they started doing these basically shout outs. And they got more and more people coming into Patreon so they could get their personal shout out. And I'm like, hey, that's a great idea. Besides, we had these $10 backers from back when we were doing the live stream, and they had stayed there. And I'm like, we really do owe those folks a little something, for staying at the $10 level. Right. And maybe we'll get a few more people jumping on to that $10 level.
Right. We'll make it so fun that they'll jump in, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And I can honestly say it backfired. What we actually did, what we actually saw, we would and this happened at least twice. Where somebody heard on the week that their affirmation went out, I'd look and they either canceled their pledge entirely or throttled down to the $5 or the $3 level. We basically reminded them that they were at $10 and they're like, oh, screw that. Our numbers actually went backwards. I think we had one person who had jumped up to the $10 level. Right. But aside from that, it was a bust. All we did was remind people that they had a certain pledge. And as soon as they heard their affirmation, they got the hell out.
And listen, the reason why we're talking about this is not to make anybody feel bad or to make or guilt anybody into jumping back in. The reason we're talking about this is that in the context of this Comic Lab podcast, which is ostensibly about like strategies that you can use to create, grow, and expand on your comics and comics business online, it's worth being honest about what are some steps and missteps that you can take in your interaction with Patreon.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've long held about Patreon is that it is somewhat akin, Brad, to the gym model, which is somebody signs up for a gym, and then once they already have their credit card on autopay, a huge part of LA Fitness or 24-Hour Fitness or whatever, Gold's Gym, whatever your local big gym chain is, a big part of their business is people forget, or they just atrophy. They forget to go cancel, or they don't want to cancel. And so the gym gets 1 more month or 2 more months or 3 more months out of you because you just are not going to get off the couch and go cancel it. You're just going to keep it. And so anytime, well, not anytime, but like one of the reasons why a gym minimizes their communication to existing customers is they don't want to remind anybody that they're subscribed to 24-Hour Fitness or LA Fitness or Gold's Gym or any of these. They just want to quietly be charging your credit card. And that's a not unhelpful scenario or comparison to patreon.com for cartoonists, is that there's a percentage of your people that once having backed you kind of forget that they're backing Brad Geiger or Dave Kellett or Comic Lab or Wrong Way. And so there is an argument to be made that it's not unlike the gym model. Am I wrong, Brad?
No, as a matter of fact, I don't know if I ever shared this advice. This was advice that I would only share in person or on a private consultation that somebody had booked with me. I don't think I ever shared it on the show, and I don't know whether I ever wrote it for either webcomics.com or the Webcomics Handbook. I might have mentioned it like once in passing, but I never spent a lot of time with it. Before Patreon went to subscription billing, they used to bill at the end of the month. Everybody, it was the same thing. If somebody came in on the 5th, they either got charged immediately and then didn't get charged again until the end of the month, in which case you could have somebody getting charged on the 28th and then the 31st back to back, which was a problem. Or you could have it so when they first signed up, they didn't get charged at all until the end of the month. That's the way it was before Patreon switched to subscription billing.
Right.
And what happened was you'd have everybody in your Patreon getting their credit cards charged at the end of the month, the last day of the month.
Right.
So my standing rule with my Patreon was never to post in the last 3 days of the month, because what would happen is, and I would see this happen in real time, I'd make a post on the 30th, let's say the 30th of a month that had 31 days. I'd make a post on the 30th and see 3 or 4 people immediately cancel their pledge.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'd sit there smacking my forehead because it's counterintuitive, right? And I'd see other people on Patreon doing this where the end of the month was coming up. Maybe they hadn't posted what they thought was enough, and they had to hurry up and get one in under the wire to get one in. And they'd post something, and then I'm sure they were having this. They'd never say it out loud, but I'm sure they were having the same experience that I was, where you post something under the wire, and then all of a sudden, basically all you're doing is reminding these people that they're going to get charged again. And then boop, 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 boop. I'd see a bunch of people dropping out. And so I had a standing rule on my Patreon back when the billing was handled that way, that I would not post in the last 3 days of the month. I'd post like crazy going up to that. And if there was something that was, it took a long time to finish or whatever, I would hold it until like the second of the month. You know, I put a nice little buffer in there just in case, because you were hurt. You were slitting your own throat doing this stuff like that. People would just jump right out.
And listen, I didn't do that myself, but the way that I would but I'm just saying, like, Brad and I have slightly different approaches, and that's okay. Is that the way I would sort of deal with that myself is to tell myself, like, look, people got to go when they got to go. Yeah. And in all likelihood, I probably got an extra 2 months out of them before they realized that they financially needed to leave the Patreon, and that's okay. What Brad and I mostly advocate is the best way to do it is continue to make energetic and enthusiastic outreach to non-Patreon folks, and then to make the Patreon so worthwhile that people continuously are reminded how worth it is to stay on Patreon with you, right? And then you have to allow for chips to fall where they may for people with their own, hey, I lost my job, hey, I need to financially tighten the ship a little bit. That is going to happen all the time on an ongoing basis with a percentage of your backers. And so that's why with this, Brad and I are more laughing than trying to guilt anybody into this, because we know in all likelihood, we probably got these people for a few more months than we should have at the $10 level. And then as soon as we reminded them with the Susan MacTaggart affirmation, they're like, oh shit, I'm still backing at the $10 level. What am I doing? I got to get out of there. So it's human nature and it's fine. But we thought it was a worthwhile talking point to talk about the machinations of Patreon, in that sometimes your best efforts to make something more enjoyable for people will actually end up reminding them, like, oh, you know what? I still want to support Brad, or I still want to support Dave, or Brad and Dave. And but I just can't afford this level on an ongoing basis or on a continuing basis right now. And that's fine. That is fine.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. My thought has always been on that kind of thing is, you know, a Patreon backer, they leave when it's necessary for them to leave for whatever reason, right? It's fun. And 9 chances out of 10, you look on those exit interviews and the answer is the same. You know, my finances have changed. I've got to make this change. And my thought has always been the same way. You've got to jump out when you've got to jump out. My job is to make that a difficult decision. My job.
That's a great way to say that. Yes. Yeah.
That's always been what goes on in my head, where I say, you got to do what you got to do, but I got to make it hard for you. I've got to be posting the kind of stuff there that makes it very difficult for you to make that decision. And then you just keep your head down, go back to that discussion we had at the very beginning of the show, and get working on your next project. You can't get too muddled down into what happens at the end of the month, every month on Patreon, and you're living and dying by those numbers you see finally resolving on the first of the next month. You got to put your head down and get back to doing that thing that you're good at, because nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. You gotta keep going.
I love that, because I love the way you said that, because it's a version of that Steve Martin quote, which is get so good that they can't ignore you. Right. And that's a version of what Brad just said with Patreon, which is make Patreon so enjoyable and so worthwhile for them that they're like, you know what? This is a hard decision. I'm going to stay for another month, another month, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or that when they do finally jump out, that they're like, I miss that thing that used to drop into my inbox, you know?
And then I've also, the older I've gotten and the longer we've done this, I've also made huge peace with the fact that some folks are just constitutionally opposed to one more subscription in their life, and that's okay by me. They support big when a Kickstarter comes around and they get the big package of book and whatever all the extra tchotchkes are, and they swing big with $100 or $150 pledge, but they're not down with doing a $3 a month Patreon pledge. They'd rather do one $150 pledge every year or every 18 months or so, which is why I personally feel like it's good to have a balance of many legs under the table, because not every reader is appealed to with one type of social outreach or social media outreach or distributed fundraising outreach. Not everyone likes Kickstarter. Not everybody wants a physical item in their life. That's 100% true. And not everybody likes Patreon, because not everybody likes a subscription in their life. So, and not everyone likes to go to Comic-Cons, or not everyone likes to go to signings. So you have to have multiple outreaches and multiple legs under your table, because not every personality, not every background, not every financial situation works for that thing that you're appealing to, you know?
Absolutely. So Dave, we've got time for one more question, and we've got a rare technical question that I want to tackle today. Comes in from our friend Chris Eliopoulos, who writes, hey, and boy, do I feel this. He goes, I'm used to the world of print. Online publication, it can confuse me very easily, mostly about file prep. My original strip is 16 1/4 by 6 inches and 600 DPI in Clip Studio Paint. I export it to Photoshop, where I reduce the size of the resolution, that's the DPI, to 144 DPI with resample unchecked.
Okay.
But then that makes the file 67 inches by 25 inches. That seems obnoxiously huge. What should I be doing differently to reduce the dimensions without making the image look like a 6-bit video game image?
I love it. So Brad, first, is it worth talking about when you're taking... There's two outputs that we're going to be talking about in relation to this, because you never want to reduce the file so much that the original can't be brought to print. Right. And so in print, what would the DPIs be? What would the sizes need to be, both of the black and white file, if you're going to do separation, and the color files? Just give everybody the base points for that first, and then we'll talk about exporting for the web.
Yeah, for resolution, I like 600 a lot for black and white line art that doesn't have any grays.
Because there's not a lot of data there, so 600 DPI doesn't make a huge file.
And you can get a lot out of that and keep your lines nice and crisp. And you'll notice Chris is doing the right thing by starting very large. In other words, there's no place in the world that's going to run his strip at 16 inches wide. But he's a pro in that he knows that to reduce that size-wise, his lines are going to tighten up. They're going to get more crisp. They're going to get more, any of those blemishes are going to be unable to be seen. So he's doing the right thing by working big and then reducing. But just in terms of resolution, which is measured in DPI or PPI, it's the same thing. I like 600 for line art. I like 300 or 400 for either grayscale or a full color image. And then I like 72 DPI for the web, with a caveat, and where I'm going to talk about this as part of a conversation that we're going to get into. But when it comes down to web size, the DPI isn't as important as the pixel ratio that you're going to choose. But I'm old school, and I just got to do 72 DPI. For my
it's partially because we came up 20 years ago and we're sort of stuck with it.
It's just got to be, it's part of the deal. Now that might be, like when I was doing Greystone Inn, which was originally a black and white comic strip, I might have as many as 3 different files for every comic strip. I would have a 600 DPI master file. I would have a 300 DPI grayscale version that I added the grays, and I would have the 72 DPI version that went up on the web. Always had that master file at 600 that I could go back to or get something out of if I just wanted to capture that one little background that I did or something like that. Right. I could do that. But I might have 3 files for every single strip. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that at one point I had 4 for each, because I had one that was a black and white bitmap just for newspaper printing. But that's way in the weeds.
That's a whole nother story with a whole nother technology.
And that gets way more complicated. But here's what let's get Chris straightened out on reducing first. Okay. First of all, the first mistake you made is that you have to check resample. And we're giving Photoshop instructions here. A lot of this stuff is going to kind of follow Photoshop's lead. But the first thing is you have to check resample, because if you don't, as you quickly found out, all that did is you didn't have resample clicked. And so you increased the or decreased the DPI, you decreased the resolution, and it just made the whole thing bigger. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, Brad, by not clicking resample, one of the things Photoshop did there is that it said, I need to retain this data, all this data.
Right.
So if you're going to reduce the DPI, I need to increase the physical size of this object so that I don't lose any data, right? Isn't that
right?
Like no resampling was done, right?
Right. As a matter of fact, if you know, I just did a quick check here, and you can check this because the file size stays the same. One of my illustrations is 15 3/4 wide inches at 400 DPI. If I uncheck resampling and change the DPI to 72, the width grows to 87.5 inches, but both of those files are 194 megabyte. It's the same thing. You just rearranged the pixels. You just had a looser pixel net, or you had a tighter pixel, screen.
Now, let me ask you an image processing question, because you are the resident expert more than I. I think that I understand the term resampling, but when I do click resample and then I ask Photoshop or another program to reduce the size of the file, and there is a black pixel next to a white pixel, and the software is now being asked with reducing the size of the file, it has to then decide, okay, I'm going to reduce these, say, 2 pixels down to 1. It then chooses some gradation of gray depending on the pixels around it that will help imply at a smaller size what the eye saw at a larger size. Am I right in saying that's what resampling is doing?
And that's, if you go into resample, you'll see there's words next to it. Right now, the latest version of Photoshop, I think it defaults to automatic, but you'll see like bicubic sharpener. And there's a bunch of other
And there are basically
choices.
different kinds of math choices, algorithmic choices that the software can use to get to that same end that I just described, which is variations on how to fool the eye and eventually the printed file, that you're achieving the same result with less data that you had at this huge file size, right?
Exactly right. So what you're going to do is first you're going to check resample. Okay. And I just use automatic. You can also choose bicubic sharpener. You can also experiment and see what you like better. But the next part here is important. This is one of the few times where order of operation becomes crucial, because you have to change the resolution first. And it's a little bit counterintuitive, because basically you've got 3 numbers that are stacked up, and this is the number that's at the bottom. So it's not like you go at the top and work your way down.
Right.
You got to go to the bottom and change that resolution. I suggest changing it to 72 first. Again, but that's because I'm very old school. There's probably some people out there that says, nah, you don't need to do that at all. But to keep myself in check, that's the first thing that I do. And I change that first. Then, and only then, will I go back up and change the width. And there'll be a little lock in there between the width and the height. And that means that it's going to make all those changes proportional. So if you change the width, it'll change the height to be proportional to that. Okay. And so after I change the resolution and I change it to 72, then I'll change the width. Usually I work with the width to whatever pixel amount that I want to have there.
Like, let's say you display it 2,000 pixels wide as a standard. Yeah.
And then that'll give you a new smaller file size that will look very good on a screen. Now, the next question that you're asking is, great, what pixel amount should I choose for my width? Right? They're like, you could make it 2,000, but is 2,000 too much? Is 2,000 not enough? So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you make a good choice for that? And I'll tell you what I do. And there, again, this is not like I do this and you should absolutely do it. I'm just telling you what I do. And there might be better answers out there, but I'll tell you what I do and why I do it. And then you can figure out what you think for yourself. But in general, right now, common desktop screen widths. I've got a size that I will use for desktop images and a size that that I will use for images that I expect to be played on a smartphone screen. So on my website, if I put a comic up, I might have the entire comic strip or the entire comic page on the desktop version. But since I use Tucheki for my website, if a person comes to that same page and views it on a screen, it automatically converts it to a vertical scroll, and it shows different images in that case, right? So for every comic, I put up a desktop version, and then I chop that into the number of panels that's required, and each one of those is a separate image. And so what I'm going to give you is the desktop width. I use 2,000 pixels wide. And I'll tell you why I do that. For a typical desktop screen, a low-res screen width is about 1280 pixels. A standard HD is 1920 pixels. A 2K is 2560, and a 4K is 3840. So 1920 is kind of a solid modern baseline. Okay. And so since I don't want to do a whole bunch of these images at like 3,800 pixels, I choose 2,000 as a really nice. It gives me a good manageable file size. It gives me something that looks good on the screen. Okay. For my vertical scroll images, I use 1,000 for those. I could, by the way, in the past, I've also used 1080 because I think that also lined up with either Instagram or Webtoon. But now it's just to keep this old brain easier. It's just 2,000, 1,000, 2,000, 1,000. And I've got similar reasons for that, right? I go and I take a look at smartphones. They've got and take a look at what their screens accept and so forth. 1080, an image will appear nice and crisp on most modern devices, even when they're scaled. And since I know that I'm going to have a bunch of these in a vertical scroll, I'm going to have whatever smartphone is receiving that. It's going to get maybe 6 or 7 of these. So yes, I could make them bigger, but now I'm taxing that smartphone and those images might load more slowly. So I just make it 1,000 wide for each of those panels and let it rip. You might have different, your mileage may vary, as they say, but that's what I'm going to do to make sure that those images look as good as they can on most of the screens that they're going to be presented on.
Yeah, and I have no substantial changes or suggestions other than to say about every decade of working on the internet, you will find that technology has gotten so much better that you kind of have to revisit it. So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing, but it's not you have to change every 6 months. For the longest time with Greystone Inn and early Sheldons, this was like 25 years ago, Brad and I were running them at like, 800 DPI wide not very wide, because technology and cost limitations were very much in force. And so it took too long to download them, and it took us too much to host them in terms of expenditure to have these big file sizes. So everything was smaller. And then about a decade later, we could go to 1,500. And now a decade after that, we can go to 2,000.
Yeah.
And I very much think that we're not many years away from all of us maybe having to switch to a 4K file because both the iPhone and home desktop computing monitors, the prices are coming down on 4K monitors, and things are just going to look wonky if we're presenting them 1,000 DPI wide file, or, not a DPI, 1,000 pixel wide file, or 2,000 pixel wide file. It's what I'm saying is just long term, know that you might have to change this in the long term, but for the short term, Brad is right. I have nothing discernible to go against what Brad just said. Just long-term, know that about every 10 years or so, you've noticed that technology has made such a slow but steady increase that you'll probably have to start exporting new file sizes. Don't you think, Brad?
And you're just all across the board. You're just going to have to get used to making some changes like that. Whether you're doing comics or podcasts, like this used to be an hour podcast. Now you'll notice with those new 4K podcatchers that people are listening on, you're going to hear usually about an hour 5, hour 6 minutes until finally you hear me say that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my ever delightful friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com, and the handsome new co-host of the New Drawing Show over at wrongwayshow.com.
And my close personal friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com, and another handsome co-host along with Kevin McShane of the New Drawing Show at wrongwayshow.com. And I think if I'm looking at my calendar right, this week we've got a new show coming out at wrongwayshow.com, and I can't wait for you folks to see it. It is going to be so good. So if you haven't seen the show yet, do take a moment to tune this one in. It's a barn burner.
And I will say, for Patreon backers especially, we release longer cuts, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, with more jokes, more delightfulness from Brad for Patreon backers over at patreon.com/wrongwayshow. Is that what it is?
Wrong Way Show. Yep.
Yeah. So you can, and I think if you just go to wrongwayshow.com, that'll show you the path to take. But the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by the ever wonderful Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, and we know that you do, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Spotify, where we are burning up the podcast chart.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/when wandering in the woods, if you encounter a wild Brad Geiger, just present him with a light bulb. That will confuse and scare him.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
Hello, Susan MacTaggart here.
Hey, Susan, this is Brad. I just wanted to let you know we're not gonna need you next week. I think we can break the contract. We've got nothing for you next week.
Oh, Bradley John, you silly little goose. I'll be there normal time, normal channel, Bradley. Oh, you can't keep a good Susan MacTaggart down, Bradley John.
No, I guess there's no other way to say this. I'm changing the locks on the doors over the Head Dave studio. You're not going to be able to get in. We're done. We're at the end of our contract.
Oh, Bradley John, how you do like to joke. I'll see you at 9:30. I'm always there, Bradley John.
Okay,
9:30.
You're not. No more. We're done. You're fired. We don't need you anymore. No more Susan.
Bradley, I say this with all the love in my heart, summoning all the stars and moons to say, fuck you, Brad Geiger.